You are listening to the Manument Podcast. My name is Casey, and I'm here with my buddy Glenn Johnson, investment advisor and founder of Jabez Financial right here in the Uncasville area. In every episode, he is here to break down today's biggest retirement worries and headlines for us. And Glenn, I wanted to talk to you about this MIT study that I read earlier this week. You know that back in April, the stock market went down almost 20% in just a few days. Then it bounced back in a week, and now it's near its highest point of the year. But if you panicked and sold, you might be wondering what to do now. So this study from MIT found that of the people who tried to time the market and got burned, 30% were out of the stock market for good. So Glenn, talk to us about this. What would you tell someone who sold during the crash?
Well, if you sold during the crash, chances are you didn't have the stomach for the volatility, and you shouldn't have been in it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And this is where if somebody sells after the market goes down, there's the indicator that your asset allocation wasn't appropriate going into it. And I would be curious to find out why you made those decisions in the first place. Was it because you just wanted to see how much money you could possibly make? Or was it because the advice that you had received in the past was, this is the best asset allocation for you to have and don't worry about it. We're in this for the long haul. You know, we all want to look at, well, why is it that we ended up selling at a low when we all know intellectually that's not the time to sell? But people do it anyway. It's because they weren't making the right decisions before it crashed. So now when we look at what happened recently with the big dip and then the bounce right back, when we have volatility in the market, well, the market's always relatively volatile. Mm-hmm. But the question is, at what point, where in this secular cycle is the volatility? Is the volatility near the top, or is the volatility near the bottom? See, in 2009, after the crash, the market was still volatile then, but it was volatile at a low. And when it's volatile at a low, there's far less risk than when it's volatile at a high.
You know, our emotions can really get the best of us, Glenn, in our personal lives and in our financial lives. And, you know, when this market is bouncing all over the place, it makes you wonder how anyone can keep a cool head. I told you I'm the kind of gal, I like my money right where I can see it, right where I can get to it. So I want to ask you this, Glenn. That MIT study said that 30% of people who tried to time the market never got back in. So what does that tell us about the psychology of investing, and how can people avoid making fear-based decisions?
Well, it's interesting that people stop making fear-based decisions when they get the rest of their life right. Mm-hmm. See, a lot of times if we have one area in our life that's a mess, let's say, for example, if our marriage is a mess, maybe that'll cause us to overeat. Or if we're physically or if we're emotionally depressed, maybe we'll go spend extra money to buy extra lattes or whatever to feel better. So when one area of our life isn't right, we end up self-sabotaging another area of our life. So if we're going to pick apart an aspect of our life to get control over, getting control over your finances is easy. And that's where oftentimes it can be a really good place to start. Because when our finances are in order, we can fix that without having the emotional component to it. Then we can start focusing on improving other areas of our life. And you know, some people say, well, I keep my work at work and my home at home. That's impossible. Because if you have a kid that's strung out on drugs, it's going to mess with your professional career. Or if you there is influence from one aspect of our life to another. So getting back to, why does somebody pull their money out of the economy or out of the market at the worst possible time? Oftentimes it's because there's a lack of control somewhere. So if something's out of control in one area of their life, they're going to turn around and say, well, you know what? I'm at least going to take control here. At least I'm going to stop the bleeding with this. Or I'm not going to participate in this because that's something I can control. So what we find is when someone sells to get out of the market and they want to take control over their money, and by doing so, they know they're making a bad financial decision, it's because they're trying to get control over their life, which it may be due to another reason altogether. So when I work with my clients and talk about this, what I like to talk about is, let's properly allocate and preserve what you have now. Let's get things settled now. Put things in the right order. Then have a conversation around what's coming next. And we want to make sure that we don't have those outside influencers or those outside circumstances influencing us into making poor financial decisions.
But let me ask you this, Glenn. You mentioned these 5S, faith, family, fitness, friends, finance. Do you find if somebody gets one of these, starts with one of these Fs and starts getting that in order that the others can follow, does that make it easier for the other Fs to follow?
Absolutely. Think about this. When you start exercising, all of a sudden you start eating better because you don't want to undo what you just did.
Right.
So success breeds success. Just like failure breeds more failure. When we make a decision for ourselves to say, you know what, in this area of my life, I'm going to get this right. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. I'm going to obtain the wisdom that I need to be able to make better decisions, because the decisions you make determine the choices you'll have. When we learn to make better decisions, we have more options. And when we learn to make better decisions with our fitness, so I'm going to start exercising, I'm going to use it or lose it. I'm going to accept the pain that comes along with building more muscle and getting stronger. I'm going to accept the growth and the work that's involved in it. Now we've also strengthened our own discipline to reject the kind of foods that we shouldn't be eating. So that's why I say accepting the pain, gaining the confidence, increasing our discipline, that mindset overlaps into every single area in our life. When I talk about wanting to improve the quality of life for my clients, my friends, my family, my community, understanding that your quality of life is primarily determined by what you think about and how you feel about it. It's all up here. Your quality of life is in your head. And that's where the battleground is. So when we talk about organizing someone's finances, we can think back at, back in the day, the only financial concerns people really needed to pay attention to was live within your means and have an emergency reserves. And everything else was taken care of. People had pensions and Social Security and whatever else, and their house was paid off. They just need to take care of the basic things. But now things have gotten so much more complicated. We have to make sure we have the right mindset when approaching these critical topics that have so much effect on our lives. We have to take, that's the thing, we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially. And once we assume the responsibility that say, this is on me, we know that only a fool counsels himself. So that's when we can proactively say, who out there do I want to permit to speak into my life to correcting the way I think about certain things? We like to talk about how people will never act in opposition to their belief system for any extended period of time. They'll always revert back to their belief system. They'll always, even when they start to do well and start to make progress, they'll self-sabotage and go back to their original way of thinking. It's kind of like if somebody can lose a bunch of weight and say, wow, you look great for a fat guy. And then all of a sudden it comes right back on. Or if somebody's quit smoking and say, wow, you've done really what you've been a smoker your whole life and you haven't smoked for 30 minutes. Well, now I'm back to smoking. So we always go back to our identity and our vision and our belief that we have in ourself and our traditional thought patterns. And that's why people that struggle financially when they're 20 and 30 and 40 still struggle financially when they're in their 70s, 80s, because they've accepted a certain level, acceptable amount of financial stress. So when they start to make a lot of progress and say, wow, I've really gotten ahead here, they'll self-sabotage and blow it. And then if things get really tough, they'll say, you know what, oh boy, I got to get it together and step it up. And then they bring themselves back up to that same level of acceptable amount of financial stress. And that's why people get stuck. So if we're going to see any permanent progress, we have to be able to do what's necessary to increase our success, not just financially, but in any aspect of our life, because the success principles don't change based upon the topic. When we do what's necessary to get ourselves to the next level, financially or otherwise, we have to stay there long enough so that becomes comfortable and that becomes what's normal for us. And then once we're there long enough, now we've achieved the next level of sustainable success because we will see ourselves there. See, these are the kinds of conversations I have with my clients every day. And this is why I want to invite you to give the office a call, schedule a time to come in for a conversation. As said earlier, our phone number is 860-288-9977. And when you come in for a conversation, here's what I'd like to share with you what to expect. Now, with most financial advisors, what they want you to do is they want you to gather all of your financial documents, tax returns, statements, everything that you have, and bring it in, and maybe sometimes even send it into the office in advance. Here's what I'm asking. I'm asking that when you give a call, say, I want to schedule a conversation with Glenn, and my request is that you bring a smile. Any financial paperwork that you have, you're welcome to leave it at home. Now, if there's something you'd like me to take a look at, you're welcome to bring it. But to me, and the work that I do here goes far beyond the money. I want to develop the right relationships with the right people. In fact, that's why I say I want to have the first 5 of you this week give the office a call and come in for a conversation. I do have to keep that at a limit because I want to make sure I'm developing the right relationships. I never want to wake up in the morning and look at my calendar and be like, oh, geez, this guy.
Yes.
I want
to talk to John today.
That's right. I want to look forward to seeing you just as much as I'd like you to look forward to seeing me.
Yes, I highly encourage you to sit down with Glenn, have a conversation. He's incredibly easy to talk to, and let's see how he can best help you on your journey. There's no obligation here. It's just a conversation, but you've got to make the call. 860-288-9977, and we are standing by right now to take your call and get you on Glenn's calendar. That number for you one more time, 860-288-9977, or if you prefer online, you can find us anytime at jabezfinancial.com. And that's Jabez, J-A-B-E-Z. All right. I know you know this, Glenn, working with retirees, but there are some people out there that just never seem to slow down. So I want us to take Paul McCartney, for example, here. At 83, he is gearing up for another tour and says that he is not getting any signals to stop. Let's take a listen to Sir Paul.
As far as retiring is concerned, it's nothing I'm looking forward to or even thinking of. I've always said that as long as people want to come and see me, then I'll probably do it. I'll probably feel like doing it. The minute I start to feel like sort of, shuffling around in the audience and going, oh, it's not very good, is it? Or the tickets aren't selling well, then I'll get the big message of ding, it's time to go.
Wow, so that really makes you think, Glenn, not everyone's vision of retirement is sitting at home, putting their feet up, calling it a day. So I wanted to ask you, when clients come to you and say they still really love what they do and they don't see any reason to retire, how do those conversations usually unfold? What's that dialogue like when someone's passion for their work and what they do is keeping them still in the game?
Well, it's a big congratulations to them. When I was in my early 20s, I remember sitting in a seminar way up in the nosebleed section in Hershey Stadium in Pennsylvania. And one of the most successful men I ever heard speak said, I'll retire the day after I die, maybe. Right? And I thought to myself, wow, and I spent some time thinking about that. And if we're able to construct a lifestyle that we don't want to retire from, now we're living life to the fullest. I'll tell you, not too long ago, I had a client in my office she could retire. She had all the money she needed. She was financially able to retire, but she was scared. And she hated her job. It made her sick. She couldn't stand it. And I asked her, I said, well, and then she carried on by saying, you know what? I can't wait for Friday. I dread Mondays. I can't wait for the end of the season to come through. And I told her, I said, well, you know what? You're really looking forward for your life to end. If you keep looking forward to Friday and you can't wait for Saturday and you can't stomach having to wake up and go to work on Monday morning, you're looking forward to things to end.
Yeah.
Now, you find, and that's a tragic place to be. And so she told me, she said, well, if you can show me how I can retire, I'll do it. So I stuck out my hand. I say, will you shake on it? Right. She retired within a month.
Oh, my
great.
goodness. Well, good
Absolutely.
for her.
And so when we're building a lifestyle of people that don't want to retire, I can tell you this, personally, I have no retirement date. There is no date on my calendar that I'm looking forward to saying, boy, I can't wait to stop doing this. Because my mentors early on taught me, what if you can define your ideal day, like what time do you want to wake up? Who do you want to be with? What do you want to have for breakfast? What do you want to do for exercise? What do you want your day to look like start to finish? And if you can construct a career and a lifestyle that provides that, now you've built a lifestyle for yourself that you can continue living every day, because your quality of life is what's today. It's not yesterday or tomorrow. So let's learn how to build a really good today. In fact, one of my favorite books by John Maxwell is Today Matters. And we learn about what do we need to do to make an ideal day that we look forward to. And so, like my dad, he was a truck driver. He took an early retirement. And then he decided, he's like, wait a minute, now that I don't have to work, now that I don't have to do it for money, he enjoyed it. So he went back to work and he was still driving an 18-wheeler full time when he was 82 years old.
Wow.
So he'll work anybody under the table. And,
yeah.
And that's why I look at it. As long as you can do it, keep doing it. So that's like, what was it? Henry Ford that said, when I rest, I rust. Right? So we want to keep going, recognize our limitations, meaning we cannot physically do what we used to be able to do 30 years ago. But if we're still working at full capacity, we are still living life to our fullest. Recognizing that as we slow down physically, as we can't do the same number of things that we used to be able to do, that does not decrease our value at all. So value is intrinsic. And that's a good point to understand. Your value is not based upon what you can do. So sometimes people will keep working not because they want to, but because they feel like if they stop working, they'll lose their value, because their identity has been wrapped up in so much in what they do rather than who they are. When you identify a car driving down the road, you're like, oh, that's a Mercedes, that's a BMW, that's a Chevy, a Subaru, a Honda, whatever. When we identify cars, they're identified by their manufacturer, right? And that's where, when our identity is in our manufacturer, we'll recognize that we had a perfect creator. That value is intrinsic. I was in church last week, and a man was asking me. I pulled a dollar bill out of my wallet, and I asked him. I said, "Well, how much do you think this is worth?" And he told me $20. I said, "Right." I crumpled it all up, and I said, "Well, now what do you think it's worth?" Right? It's like $20. All right. So when we get older and we get wrinkly, we're still worth the same amount. Our value hasn't changed. So we don't have to keep working just to maintain our value. Our value is intrinsic. But if we can construct a lifestyle that enables us, that we can keep working and keep wanting to do what we're enjoying and being fulfilled with, I mean, that's the biggest win right there. That's winning at life.
Yeah. Well, that's really beautiful that you're still worth the same even when you're old and wrinkly. I love that, Glenn. What a pretty picture that you painted. Now, I wanted to ask you, because I know a big part of your business is helping people work on relationships, and you do a little bit of marriage counseling. And I told you I'm getting married next year, so a successful marriage is something that's on my brain all the time. And one thing that I've noticed being in this business is that retirement doesn't look the same for everyone, especially for couples. And, sometimes you'll have one person that wants to travel. They want to set everything down. They want to start new hobbies, while that other one is still enjoying themselves. They still care about that work, and they're excited to head to their job every morning. And that can make planning for a couple's future a little bit tricky. So I'm curious, Glenn, how you help couples who aren't quite on the same page, whether that be financially or emotionally or both for them. How do you help them come together and work on a retirement plan that's going to make sense for the both of them?
That's an awesome question. Especially when, as people get older, the finances can become an increasing point of contention.
Yeah.
When people start out in life, maybe one of the spouses spends a little more than they should, and the other one's a little tighter than they need to be. And throughout the years, they end up overcompensating for one another. The person that's inclined to spend a little too much ends up spending way too much.
Ooh,
and the person that doesn't enjoy the moment, they'll end up becoming increasingly tight and have an emotional attachment to retaining the money. And that can send people in opposite directions. I like to use the analogy of when you start out and you have a destination in mind of saying, okay, this is where I want to go. This is where we want to end up. We're like, great, I want to go there too. I get in my car, I start driving, you get in your car, you're right behind me, you follow me, we're headed to the same place. Mm-hmm. But on this journey, on this financial journey or metaphorical journey, the person up front is using Google Maps and the person behind is using Waze, right? I mean, they start off generally going in the same direction, but then all of a sudden the person in front makes a left and the other person wants to go right. And so like, wait a minute, what's wrong here? And it causes some agitation. Or the person up front makes it through a yellow light and the person behind gets stuck at a red light. Mm-hmm. So life's adversities, whether we're using different maps or getting caught or skating through a yellow light and the other one getting stuck at a red, those life's adversities that we faced tend to put tension and separate us. Yeah. And the only way to avoid those types of things is to get in the same car. If you're in the same car, it doesn't matter if you're using Google Maps or Waze. It doesn't matter if you hit a red light, a yellow, green, or whatever. You're in the same car, you're in it together. Now, when you're in it together, you think about building that relationship and that long-term financial journey that you're with somebody. When you become one and you're on that same journey, I mean, think about it. You wouldn't take a pen and stab your own leg with it, right? Well, when you discourage your spouse for wanting to pursue their own dreams, it's kind of like stabbing yourself in the leg. We want to find out what somebody what their dreams are, and then position ourselves to help encourage them and to help them achieve them rather than to hold them back. But recognize that our significance to one another is in our point of difference, not our similarities. So as we build a life together, if both of us are identical in every department, one of us isn't needed, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. There's a reason why I reach things off the high shelf and my wife has things on the lower shelf. We're different, and I'm glad we're different. My gosh, I would not want her looking like me.
Yeah.
So anyway, how do you avoid the financial component of one person wanting to do nothing and the other one person wanting to travel the world, or one wants to stay home and one wants to travel the world? How do you manage that? There's a season for everything. And so when we learn how to make what's important to our spouse important to us, now what I can do is, if I want to stay home, look, I've done a lot of traveling. I really enjoy being home. I've built my home the way I like it. I enjoy being there. I have a nice property that I like to go to. And my wife can support me by being with me at home. But she also likes to vacation. So I'm going to support her by going on those trips with her also.
Yes. I love that. I mean, I think it's important for people to remember that retirement, it's not a one-size-fits-all experience, and that is especially true for couples. So when partners are on different emotional or financial pages, it can be a real source of stress. But I think that first step is to open that line of communication, incorporate the help of a professional that can help get you guys on the same page and help you find that middle ground. And Glenn and his team at Jabez Financial want to be that partner for you. So we want to remind you that our first 5 callers today can get this conversation started complimentary. Glenn is offering you an introductory conversation. 860-288-9977 is how you reach us to claim your spot. And I just want to remind everyone, there's no obligation obligation attached to this meeting. It is just a conversation to see how Glenn can best help you move forward. So I encourage you to take advantage, but spots are limited. So snag yours now. That number again, 860-288-9977. One more time, that's 860-288-9977. Or, of course, you can connect with us online anytime at jabezfinancial.com. This is the Manuman Show with investment advisor Glenn Johnson, founder of Jabez Financial. And Glenn, we were talking about the 5S: faith, family, friends, finances, that last one being fitness. And I don't know about you, but I definitely struggle to get those recommended 10,000 steps every day that they say you need to stay healthy. But I was reading this week, I've got some good news on that front. A study found that as little as 7,000 daily steps can promote nearly the same health benefits as if you get that 10K. So when I saw this news, it got me thinking. I like to, think of things from retirement perspectives, and it reminded me of trying to calculate just how much savings you'll need to retire. Some shoot for that magic number of, say, $1.8 million. Others believe that you should have 70 to 80% of your annual salary. So, Glenn, talk to us about this. How do you figure this out for clients, and what factors are you considering when you sit down with someone to make their retirement plan and figure out how much they're going to need?
Well, when some people say, well, boy, I need to have $1 million to retire. No. You need 7. No, just kidding. So really here, when it comes to financial independence, and that's what we're moving towards, because retirement, in my mind, is really retiring from things that you don't want to do anymore. Financial independence is when money no longer determines what your schedule looks like every day. So as we move towards financial independence, what that has to do with is acquiring enough assets that spill off enough income to support the lifestyle you want to live. It's all about building assets. Now, in order to do that, you have to know what an asset is. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket every month. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket every month. It's all about cash flow. So when we look at the lifestyle, this is why knowing how you want to live is the first thing that you have to determine. Right. How do you want to live? What do you want your day to look like? And when you figure out how you want to live, how often you want to travel, what kind of foods you want to eat, and what kind of gifting you want to do, once you figure out how you want to live, you can put a price tag on it. Once you put that price tag on it and say it's going to cost X amount of dollars, and whether it's $4,000 a month or $40,000 a month, whatever that price tag is, now we know, okay, that's the objective. What are we going to do that's going to spill off enough income to support that lifestyle? And whatever that cost is, the things that we have to take into consideration, obviously, are things like taxes and all kinds of stuff like that. But we add it up. Essentially, okay, you've got X amount of dollars from Social Security. Maybe you have a pension coming in from that. And then we look at, well, how much money do you need from your investments, whether it be from your 401k and IRA or after-tax accounts? How much income do you need coming from there? And then depending upon how much income you need to take will determine how much you need based upon a realistic expected return. And that's where there's so much debate over, well, if you need $30,000 a year, now you need $1 million at 3%. Well, if you need $30,000 a year at 6%, you only need $500,000 saved. So there's some variables there, and depending upon someone's financial experience and knowledge, that will set the stage. And also riskability and tolerance plays a part of it. All of those are contributing factors to decide how much do I need to retire. And that's where the conversation needs to happen, where as we get to know one another and I get a better understanding of who you are, what you're looking to accomplish, your degree of financial experience, your desire and how much you want to learn. Once we're able to put some of these things together, then we can say, well, this is a good scenario for you. And it's so different, it's vastly different from one person to the next, because you can look at two people with identical financial situations numerically, but based upon their thinking and their experience, what is good advice and sound advice for one would be horrible for the next.
Yeah.
So so how much do you need to retire? enough. There we go. But
yes.
let's have a conversation.
How much do you need to retire? The answer is yes.
Right. It's enough. And so let's have that conversation to find out what it is that you need. So again, I invite you to call in. I invite you to call at 860-288-9977. Pick a time to get on my calendar and have a conversation. You may be a lot closer than you think. A lot of times people have concerns about, I'm not going to make it, because they don't know how they could. And when we uncover and we reveal how you can make it in retirement and how you can live comfortably, it eliminates all that stress, and we can look forward to those retirement years with optimism, which increases a quality of life today.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Manument Podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so that you never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Investment advisory services offered through Jabez Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities, offered through Glenn Johnson, Connecticut Insurance, license number 4628409. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Jabez Financial, LLC. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Jabez Financial, LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Jabez Financial, LLC is licensed in your state, please call 860-390-0093.